The ATM card sat in my wallet for 23 years, edges worn smooth from 2 decades of sitting untouched behind my driver's license. My mother pressed it into my hand the week before she died, her fingers weak but insistent. Use this only when you have absolutely nothing left, she whispered. I promised her I would, never thinking that day would actually come. But here I was, standing outside a Bank of America branch on a Tuesday afternoon with $73 in my checking account and nowhere to sleep tonight. I'm 45 years old. 3 days ago, my wife of 15 years kicked me out of our house like I was trash she forgot to take to the curb. She kept everything. The house, the cars, the savings accounts, even the furniture I'd picked out. Her lawyer made sure of that. The meeting happened fast. Too fast. Preston Harden sat across from me in his downtown office. Expensive suit, expensive watch, expensive smile that never reached his eyes. He slid papers across the polished conference table. Mr. Pierce, given that all marital assets were acquired primarily through your wife's income, and considering your minimal financial contributions over the past 15 years, my client is offering you a settlement of $50,000. Sign today, and we can finalize everything by Friday. I stared at the number. 15 years of marriage. $50,000. That's $3,333 per year. But I teach high school English, I said. I contributed my entire salary to household expenses. Preston's smile widened. Your salary of $52,000 annually versus your wife's income of $420,000. The math is quite clear. My client is being generous. If you force this to trial, we'll prove your contributions were negligible. You'll leave with nothing except legal debt you can't afford. I need time to get my own lawyer. The offer expires when you leave this room. Preston tapped his Montblanc pen against the contract. Your choice. Walk out with $50,000 today, or walk out with nothing and spend the next year fighting a battle you can't win. My wife sat beside her lawyer, scrolling through her phone like she was waiting for a delayed flight. She didn't even look at me when I picked up the pen. I signed every page. What else could I do? I couldn't afford a lawyer. I couldn't afford to fight. I couldn't afford anything. She let me pack one suitcase of clothes. Changed the security code before I reached the driveway. I spent 2 nights at a budget inn off the highway, eating gas station sandwiches and trying to figure out what went wrong with my life. The $50,000 check sat on the nightstand. It felt like a lot and nothing at the same time. In this city, that wouldn't cover first month, last month, security deposit, and furniture for a decent apartment. I need a job that paid more than teaching. I need to start completely over at 45. On the 3rd day, I finally walked to the bank to deposit the check. That's when I remembered the card. My mother died when I was 22, fresh out of college and stupid enough to think the world owed me opportunities. She worked as a bookkeeper her whole life. We never had much. She drove a 12-year-old Civic, bought clothes at thrift stores, clipped coupons from the Sunday paper. But she always made sure I had what I needed for school. The week before she passed, cancer having taken everything but her mind, she called me to her bedside. Nathan, I need you to promise me something. Anything, Mom. She pulled a bank card from her nightstand drawer. Her hands shook as she pressed it into mine. This is from an account I set up years ago. The PIN is your birthday, month and day. Promise me you'll only use this when you have absolutely nothing left. When you're at rock bottom and need help. I promised, confused but not wanting to upset her in her final days. Mom, what account? How much money? You'll understand when the time comes. Just promise me you'll wait until you truly need it. She died 3 days later. I kept the card in my wallet all these years. Never used it. Never even checked the balance. It felt wrong somehow, like admitting I needed my dead mother's help. I assumed it was maybe a small savings account. A few thousand she'd managed to put aside. But standing outside that bank with literally nothing left, I finally pulled it out. The magnetic strip was barely readable after 23 years. I slid it into the ATM, half expecting it to be rejected or closed or flagged for inactivity. Please enter your PIN. I typed 0724. July 24th. My birthday. The machine took longer than normal to process. The screen went blank. Then it flashed a message that made my stomach drop. Please see a banker immediately. Perfect. The account was probably closed. 23 years was a long time. Of course it wouldn't work. I was turning to leave when the bank's front door swung open hard. A man in a dark suit, name tag reading Hugh Osborne, branch manager, practically ran toward me. Sir, he said, breathing like he'd just sprinted across the building. "Sir, please don't move. I need you to come inside right now. It's urgent. Is there a problem?" His face was pale. His hands were actually shaking. "The account you just accessed. I need to verify something immediately. Please, this way." I followed him inside, past the teller windows, into a private office in the back. He closed the door, pulled up something on his computer, and his fingers trembled as he typed. "Sir, can I see some identification?" I handed him my driver's license. He compared it to whatever was on his screen, then looked at me like I was a ghost. "Mr. Pierce, when was the last time you accessed this account?" "Never. My mother gave me the card 23 years ago, right before she died. I've never used it until today." Hugh sat back in his chair and ran his hand through his hair. He looked like he might throw up. "Mr. Pierce, the account you just tried to access has a current balance of $47.3 million. The words hit me so hard I actually laughed. It was the most absurd thing I'd ever heard. "That's impossible. My mother was a bookkeeper. She drove a car older than I was. We lived in a 2-bedroom apartment my entire childhood. You've got the wrong account." Hugh turned his computer screen toward me. I saw my mother's name at the top of a document. "Eleanor Marie Pierce. Your mother wasn't just a bookkeeper, Mr. Pierce. According to these records, she was the primary shareholder of something called Sterling Financial Holdings. Does that name mean anything to you?" I shook my head, feeling like I was trapped in someone else's dream. Hugh pulled up another document, this one dense with numbers and company names I vaguely recognized. Sterling Financial Holdings was a venture capital firm founded in 1980. It made early investments in several technology companies: Microsoft, Apple, Oracle. Your mother's initial $50,000 investment grew exponentially over 40 years. That can't be right. My mom never mentioned anything like this. We barely had enough money for groceries half the time. According to these notes, she specifically instructed that you not be told about the account until you accessed it yourself. There's a letter here that was supposed to be given to you when this day came. He opened a desk drawer and pulled out a sealed envelope that looked like it had been sitting there for decades. My mother's handwriting on the front, faded but clear. "For Nathan, when he needs it most." My hand shook as I opened it. The paper inside had yellowed with age, but her words were perfectly legible. "My dearest Nathan, if you're reading this, it means you finally used the card. It means you've hit bottom, and I'm sorry I'm not there to help you through whatever brought you to this moment. But maybe, in a way, I am. You're probably confused about the money. Let me explain. When I was 25, I worked as a bookkeeper for a small startup called Sterling Financial. The founder couldn't afford to pay me much, so he offered me company shares instead. I had no idea what that meant, but I needed the job, so I accepted. Those shares became worth millions when the company's investments paid off. I could have lived like a queen, Nathan, but I chose not to. I watched too many people destroy their lives with sudden wealth. I watched families torn apart by money, by greed, by people who valued dollars more than each other. So I made a choice. I would live simply, work hard, and save everything for you. For this exact moment. Not for fun or luxury, but for survival. For a second chance. I set up this account with specific instructions. You could only access it when you had nothing else. When you were at your lowest point. Because that's when money matters most. Not when you're comfortable, but when you're desperate. The amount in this account is yours completely. No taxes owed. No restrictions. It's been waiting here for you to need it. Use it wisely, my son. Not to buy things, but to build something. To start over. To become the man I always knew you could be. I love you more than all the money in the world could ever measure. Mom." I sat there in Hugh Osborne's office, holding a letter from a woman who'd been dead for 23 years, but somehow knew exactly when I'd need her. "Mr. Pierce," Hugh said quietly, "what would you like to do?" I thought about my wife sitting in our house, probably relieved to be rid of her insufficient husband. I thought about Preston Harden, who'd made me feel worthless. I thought about that $50,000 check in my pocket that was supposed to be my entire compensation for 15 years of marriage. And I started to laugh. Not from joy, from the absolute absurdity of it all. "Mr. Pierce?" Hugh looked concerned, like I was having a breakdown. I wiped my eyes and looked at him directly. "I need to make some phone calls, and I need the name of the best divorce lawyer in this state." Hugh Osborne sat across from me, watching carefully like he was worried I might pass out. He'd just told me my mother left me $47.3 million. The number felt fictional. "I need you to explain this again," I said. Slowly. He pulled up a document on his screen, turning the monitor so I could see. Your mother, Eleanor Pierce, became a shareholder in Sterling Financial Holdings in 1980. The company was a venture capital firm that invested early in technology companies. Microsoft, Apple, Oracle. When those companies went public and grew, your mother's shares increased in value dramatically. But she lived in a two-bedroom apartment. She worked as a bookkeeper until she got sick. We ate frozen dinners and store-brand cereal. Hugh nodded. According to the notes in her file, that was intentional. She witnessed several families in her circle destroy themselves when they came into sudden wealth. Marriages fell apart. Kids developed addictions. People she knew lost everything to greed and poor choices. So she decided to live modestly and preserve everything for you, with one condition. What condition? That you could only access the funds when you had nothing else. When you were truly desperate. She believed that's when money matters most, not when life is comfortable, but when you're at your lowest point and need a way back up. I held the letter from my mother, reading it again. Her handwriting, faded but clear. Her voice coming through the words like she was sitting beside me. The amount in this account is yours completely, Hugh continued. No taxes owed because it's been held in a specialized trust structure. No restrictions on how you use it. Your mother set this up 40 years ago and never touched a single dollar. She just let it grow and waited for this day. I sat back in the chair, trying to process what this meant. 3 days ago, I was broken. My wife had crushed me. Her lawyer had made me feel worthless. I signed away 15 years of my life for $50,000 because I thought I had no other choice. And now this. Mr. Pierce, what would you like to do? Hugh asked. I thought about Preston Hardin's smug face. I thought about my wife checking her phone while I signed papers that destroyed my life. I thought about how they both assumed I was beaten, finished, too weak to fight back. I need to hire a lawyer, I said. The best divorce attorney in the state. Someone who specializes in overturning unfair settlements. Hugh smiled slightly. I can make some calls if you'd like. My wife is a paralegal. She knows who handles these cases. I'd appreciate that. He picked up his phone and stepped out of the office. I sat there holding my mother's letter, reading it a third time. Use it wisely, my son. Not to buy things, but to build something. To start over. She'd sacrificed everything so I could have this moment. She'd driven that old Civic and clipped coupons and worked until cancer took her. Also, I'd have a safety net when I needed it most. I wasn't going to waste it. Hugh returned 15 minutes later with a name and phone number written on a business card. Catherine Morrison. She's expensive, $850 per hour, but she's the best. She's made a career out of cases like yours, overturning coerced settlements and fighting high-asset divorces. If anyone can help you, it's her. I took the card. Money isn't a problem anymore. He smiled. No, I suppose it isn't. Do you need anything else right now? I need to access some of the funds. Enough to secure a place to stay, hire the lawyer, and start putting my life back together. How much are we talking? $200,000 to start. Hugh didn't even blink. I'll have it transferred to your checking account within the hour. You'll have full access to everything by tomorrow morning. I stood up and shook his hand. Thank you. For everything. Mr. Pierce, your mother was a brilliant woman. She planned this down to the smallest detail. She wanted you to have options when you needed them most. I'm just glad I was here to help facilitate it. I walked out of that bank feeling like a different person, not because of the money, though that was surreal, but because suddenly I had power. I had choices. I wasn't the broken man who'd signed those papers 3 days ago. I called Catherine Morrison from the sidewalk outside the bank. Morrison Law, how can I help you? My name is Nathan Pierce. I need to speak with Ms. Morrison about overturning a divorce settlement. Hold, please. The wait was less than a minute. This is Catherine Morrison. Her voice was sharp, professional, no nonsense. Ms. Morrison, I signed a divorce settlement 3 days ago. I was given less than 24 hours to decide, told I couldn't consult with my own attorney, and threatened with financial ruin if I went to trial. I signed because I thought I had no choice. I need to know if there's any way to fight this. There was a pause. Then she said, come to my office today at 4 p.m. Bring every document you have related to the divorce. We'll talk. I'll be there. I hung up and checked the time. 2 hours. I used the time to find a hotel, a decent one this time, not some roadside place with broken ice machines. I checked in, showered for the first time in 3 days, and put on clean clothes. At 3:45 p.m., I walked into Catherine Morrison's office downtown. The reception area was modern, efficient, expensive. She came out to meet me herself. Catherine was maybe 50, gray hair pulled back, sharp eyes that missed nothing. She shook my hand with a grip that meant business. Mr. Pierce, follow me. Her office had floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. She gestured to a chair across from her desk and sat down, pulling out a legal pad. Tell me everything. Start from the beginning. I told her about the marriage, about my wife's career, about how I'd supported her by managing the household and contributing my teaching salary. I told her about the divorce papers on my pillow, the meeting with Preston Harden, the pressure to sign immediately. She took notes the entire time, asking sharp questions, clarifying details. When I finished, she sat back and studied me. Mr. Pierce, you signed away your rights to marital assets. That's going to be difficult to overcome. But there are several problems with how this settlement was obtained. You were coerced, given inadequate time to make an informed decision, explicitly prevented from seeking independent legal counsel, and the settlement amount is unconscionable, $50,000 for a 15-year marriage where you contributed your entire income to household expenses. Can you overturn it? Yes, she said without hesitation. It won't be easy, and it won't be cheap, but yes. I can file an emergency motion to set aside the settlement based on coercion, unconscionability, and failure to provide adequate financial disclosure. How much will this cost? I charge $850 per hour. A case like this could run $100,000 or more depending on how hard they fight. I can afford it. She raised an eyebrow. 3 days ago, you couldn't afford your own lawyer. What changed? I inherited money from my mother. Enough that cost isn't a concern anymore. Catherine smiled, and it wasn't a friendly smile. It was the smile of someone who'd just been given every weapon they needed for battle. Good, she said, because Preston Harden is going to fight dirty. But so will I. And unlike you 3 days ago, we now have the resources to win. Catherine Morrison filed the emergency motion 2 days later. I was sitting in a coffee shop when my phone rang with a number I didn't recognize. Hello? Is this Nathan Pierce? The voice was clipped, irritated. Yes, who's this? Preston Harden. We need to talk about this ridiculous motion your lawyer filed. I took a slow sip of my coffee, letting him wait. A week ago, this man had made me feel like dirt. Now he was calling me, and I could hear tension in his voice. I don't think we have anything to discuss, Mr. Harden. My attorney will handle everything from here. Listen, you're making a huge mistake. That settlement was fair. You accepted it willingly. No judge is going to overturn it just because you're having second thoughts. I didn't have second thoughts. I had coercion. You gave me less than 24 hours to decide, threatened me with bankruptcy if I didn't sign, and explicitly told me I couldn't get my own lawyer. That's not a negotiation. That's bullying. His tone hardened. You signed the papers. That's legally binding. Whatever money you suddenly came into doesn't change the fact that you agreed to the terms. Actually, it changes everything. See, a week ago, I was desperate. Broken. You counted on that. You knew I couldn't afford to fight, so you pushed me into signing away 15 years of my life for pocket change. But now I can afford to fight. And I will. There was a long pause. Then Preston said, your wife is willing to negotiate. We can discuss increasing the settlement amount if you drop this motion. I laughed. Actually laughed. Negotiate? Now you want to negotiate? Where was this flexibility last week when you were threatening me? Mr. Pierce, be reasonable. I am being reasonable. I'm using the legal system the exact same way you did. Except now the playing field is level, and you don't like it. I hung up. 3 hours later, my phone rang again. This time it was Catherine. Preston Harden just called me. She said, he wants to meet and discuss settlement options. What did you tell him? I told him we'll see him in court. The hearing is scheduled for next Wednesday. Judge Rachel Steinberg is presiding. She has zero tolerance for coercive legal tactics. This is good for us. What should I expect? Show up in clean clothes, be respectful, and let me do the talking. All you need to do is tell the truth if the judge asks you direct questions. I can do that. Good. And Nathan? Preston is going to try to make you look bad. He'll argue you're just bitter and greedy. Don't let him get to you. Stay calm. I will. The week before the hearing, I focused on putting my life back together. I found a small house to rent, nothing fancy, but clean and comfortable with a backyard and good light. I bought basic furniture, set up a home office, and started reconnecting with people I'd lost during my marriage. My brother River answered on the second ring. Nathan? Holy hell, I haven't heard from you in what, 3 years? I know. I'm sorry. Things got complicated. Complicated? Dude, you disappeared. I called. I texted. I even showed up at your house once, and your wife told me you were busy and shut the door in my face. I winced. Yeah, she did that to a lot of people. Wait, did you say your wife? Past tense. We're divorcing. Well, we're divorced. It's messy. River let out a low whistle. I'm sorry, man. But honestly, I'm not surprised. She always treated you like you were beneath her. I know. I just didn't see it clearly until now. You need anything? Place to stay? Money? Someone to help you move? Actually, I'm good. I just wanted to reconnect. Maybe grab dinner sometime this week. Absolutely. I'll text you some dates. And Nathan, I'm glad you called. I missed you. The hearing was set for 9 a.m. on Wednesday. I wore a simple gray suit. Nothing expensive, but professional. Catherine met me outside the courthouse at 8:30. Ready? She asked. As ready as I'll ever be. Remember, stay calm, tell the truth, and let me handle Preston. We walked into the courtroom. My wife was already there with Preston Harden. She wore a black suit that probably cost more than I used to make in a month. She didn't look at me when I sat down. All rise. Judge Rachel Steinberg entered, a woman in her early 60s with sharp eyes and an expression that suggested she'd heard every excuse in the book. Be seated. Judge Steinberg reviewed the papers in front of her, then looked up. I've reviewed the motion to set aside the divorce settlement agreement. Mr. Harden, your client offered Mr. Pierce $50,000 as full settlement for a 15-year marriage. Is that correct? Preston stood. Yes, Your Honor. The settlement reflected the relative financial contributions to the marriage. Mrs. Pierce earned significantly more than Mr. Pierce throughout their relationship, and Mr. Pierce was given how long to accept or reject this offer. We provided a 24-hour window to expedite the process. Judge Steinberg's expression didn't change, but her tone dropped a degree. You gave him 24 hours to make a life-altering decision about the dissolution of a 15-year marriage? We felt it was sufficient time. And was he permitted to consult with independent legal counsel? Preston hesitated. We encouraged him to accept the offer as presented to avoid unnecessary legal expenses. That's not what I asked, Mr. Harden. Was he explicitly allowed to seek his own attorney before signing? The settlement was structured to avoid protracted litigation. Judge Steinberg leaned forward. Mr. Harden, I'm going to ask you one more time. Was Mr. Pierce told he could consult with his own lawyer before signing these documents? Preston cleared his throat. We advised him that delaying the process would result in a less favorable outcome. So you threatened him. Judge Steinberg turned to Catherine. Ms. Morrison, your motion argues coercion and unconscionability. Make your case. Catherine stood smoothly. Your Honor, Mr. Pierce was presented with a take-it-or-leave-it offer, given less than 1 day to decide, and explicitly threatened with financial ruin if he sought independent legal counsel or declined to sign. This is textbook coercion. Furthermore, a settlement of $50,000 for a 15-year marriage where Mr. Pierce contributed his entire teaching salary to household expenses is unconscionable and punitive. Judge Steinberg looked at me directly. Mr. Pierce, did you want to sign those settlement papers? I stood. No, Your Honor. But I was told if I didn't sign immediately, I would leave with nothing and be buried in legal debt I couldn't afford. And did you have the financial means to hire your own attorney at that time? No, Your Honor. I'm a high school teacher. I couldn't afford a lawyer. Judge Steinberg made a note, then looked at Preston. Mr. Harden, this settlement was obtained under duress. Your client took advantage of Mr. Pierce's financial vulnerability to force an unconscionable agreement. The motion to set aside is granted. This case is going to trial for proper asset division. We'll reconvene in 60 days for full proceedings. Preston stood quickly. Your Honor, we'd like to request mediation before trial. Request denied. You had your chance to negotiate fairly. Now we'll let the law decide. Both parties will submit complete financial disclosure within 30 days. Dismissed. My wife finally looked at me as we left the courtroom. Her expression was pure fury mixed with disbelief. She leaned toward Preston and whispered something harsh. I walked out into the sunshine with Catherine beside me. That went well, she said. What happens now? Now we prepare for trial. They'll try to argue your contributions were minimal. We'll prove otherwise. This is going to get ugly, but we're going to win. I believed her. The trial lasted 3 weeks. Catherine Morrison was ruthless and prepared. She brought in witnesses I didn't even know she'd contacted. First up was April Schaefer, one of my wife's former colleagues. Miss Schaefer, how do you know the plaintiff? Catherine asked. I worked with her for 6 years at the tech company. I attended several dinners at their home. Can you describe those dinners? April nodded. Nathan hosted them. He cooked, he served, he made sure everyone was comfortable. His wife would arrive late, join for the meal, then leave to take calls. Nathan handled everything. The presentations she gave at those dinners, Nathan edited them. I saw the drafts with his notes. Preston tried to object, but Judge Steinberg let it continue. Catherine brought in financial experts who testified that $50,000 for 15 years was absurdly low. She brought in my principal, Floyd Ray, who testified about my dedication to teaching and how I'd turned down higher-paying positions because my wife's career required us to stay in this city. She even brought in our former marriage counselor, Maureen Proctor. Did the couple attend therapy? Catherine asked. Yes, for 8 months 2 years ago. Who initiated the therapy? Nathan did. He felt they were drifting apart and wanted to work on the marriage. And what was his wife's attitude during these sessions? Maureen hesitated, then said she attended sporadically. When she did come, she spent most of the time on her phone or making it clear she felt therapy was beneath her. Preston fought back hard. He called my wife to the stand. Mrs. Pierce, who paid for the marital home. I did. Down payment, mortgage, everything. The vehicles? Mine. The investment accounts? All funded by my income. Catherine cross-examined her with precision. Mrs. Pierce, during your marriage, did your husband manage the household? My wife shifted uncomfortably. We had a housekeeper. That's not what I asked. Did your husband handle scheduling, grocery shopping, home maintenance, and entertaining your clients? He helped, yes. Helped. Ms. Schaefer testified that your husband single-handedly hosted business dinners that were critical to your career advancement. Is she lying? No, but those were just dinners. Catherine smiled coldly. Just dinners. Dinners where you closed deals worth millions. Dinners that required planning, cooking, presentation, and client management. All while working full-time as a teacher. But sure, just dinners. Preston called character witnesses who testified about my lack of ambition. Catherine destroyed them on cross-examination, proving that supporting a spouse's career while maintaining your own profession isn't lack of ambition, it's partnership. The closing arguments were brutal. Preston argued I was bitter and greedy. Catherine argued I was a man who'd been systematically devalued and then legally bullied into an unconscionable settlement. Judge Steinberg took 2 days to render her verdict. When we returned to the courtroom, she didn't waste time. After reviewing all evidence and testimony, this court finds the original settlement unconscionable and obtained through coercion. The court orders the following: marital home to be sold, proceeds split equally. All investment accounts split equally. All vehicles sold, proceeds split equally. Mrs. Pierce will pay Mr. Pierce $450,000 in additional spousal support to equalize the settlement. Court is adjourned. My wife's face went white. She turned to Preston, who looked like he'd been slapped. I walked out of that courthouse with Catherine beside me. You just won approximately $3 million, she said. I nodded, but the money wasn't what mattered. What mattered was standing up for myself. What mattered was proving that 15 years of my life had value. Thank you, Catherine. She smiled. You did this. You fought back when most people would have just accepted defeat. My mother taught me to only use her gift when I had nothing left. Turns out having nothing left was exactly what I needed to find everything I'd lost. 6 months after the verdict, I was sitting in my backyard on a Saturday morning, grading essays and drinking coffee. The house I'd rented was modest but comfortable, with enough space for me and nothing I didn't need. The divorce settlement had been finalized. The house sold, investments divided, everything split down the middle. With the additional $450,000 the judge ordered, the total came to just over $3 million. But I hadn't changed much about my life. I went back to teaching immediately. The kids needed consistency, and honestly, so did I. Teaching gave me purpose that money never could. My phone buzzed. A text from River. Dinner tonight? Bringing Faith. She wants to meet you. I smiled and replied yes. That evening, I met my brother and his girlfriend at a small Italian place downtown. Faith was warm and funny, asking genuine questions about my work and actually listening to the answers. It felt strange after years of my wife treating my profession like an embarrassment. Your brother says you're a teacher, Faith said. What grade? High school English. Juniors and seniors mostly. That's amazing. My niece had a teacher who changed her entire life. Convinced her to apply for college when nobody else believed in her. That's why I do it, I said. The money isn't great, but when you see a kid discover they're capable of more than they thought, that's worth everything. River grinned. This is the brother I remember. The one who actually talks and smiles. After dinner, walking to my car, I felt lighter than I had in years. My brother was back in my life. I had friends again. I had work that mattered. The inheritance from my mother sat mostly untouched in conservative investments. I'd used what I needed for the legal battle and to stabilize my life, but the rest just grew quietly. I didn't need a mansion or expensive cars. I had enough. A week later, I ran into my ex-wife at the courthouse. We were both there for different reasons, hers some corporate filing, mine helping a former student navigate a legal issue. She saw me across the lobby. For a second, I thought she might turn around and leave. Instead, she walked over. Nathan. I nodded. Hello. She looked tired. Older somehow, though only months had passed. How are you? She asked. Good. Teaching, spending time with family. You? Busy. Work is demanding. An awkward silence stretched between us. Look, she said finally. I know things ended badly. I just wanted to say I'm sorry for how I handled everything. I studied her face, looking for sincerity. Maybe it was there. Maybe it wasn't. Either way, it didn't matter anymore. I appreciate that, I said. I hope things work out for you. She blinked, surprised. That's it. What else is there to say? We're divorced. The legal stuff is done. We both move forward. I thought you'd be angry. I was. For a while. But anger takes energy I'd rather spend on things that actually matter. I hope you find whatever you're looking for. I walked away before she could respond. As I pushed through the courthouse doors into afternoon sunshine, I felt nothing toward her. Not anger, not love, not even regret. Just the quiet satisfaction of a closed chapter. My mother had been right. The money mattered most when I had nothing left. But what I discovered when I had nothing wasn't wealth. It was dignity. It was knowing my worth wasn't tied to a bank account or someone else's opinion of me. I got in my car and drove back to school. I had papers to grade and lessons to plan. I had students who needed me and work that mattered. And for the first time in 15 years, that was more than enough. 1 year after the divorce was finalized, I stood in front of my classroom on the last day of school. My students were passing around yearbooks, laughing, making plans for summer. Mr. Pierce, one of my seniors, called out, "What are you doing this summer?" I smiled. "Reading, spending time with family, maybe traveling a bit." "What about you, Lucas?" "College prep. Thanks to that recommendation letter you wrote, I got into my first choice." "That's all you," I said. I just told them what I already saw in you. After the final bell rang and the classroom emptied, I sat at my desk looking at the stack of thank you notes students had left. Teaching had always been my purpose, but somewhere during my marriage, I'd forgotten that. I'd let someone convince me it wasn't enough. My phone buzzed. "River. Mom's birthday next week. Family dinner at my place. You coming? Wouldn't miss it." I typed back. I'd used a portion of my mother's gift to establish a scholarship fund in her name. The Eleanor Pierce Foundation provided college funding for students from low-income families pursuing education degrees. 20 students had received awards this year. It felt right, honoring her sacrifice by helping others the way she'd helped me. The rest of the inheritance sat invested, growing steadily. I didn't need it. My teaching salary covered my expenses comfortably. The house I rented had a garden where I grew tomatoes. I drove a reliable Toyota. I had everything I needed. That evening, I met my brother and some old friends at a local restaurant. We laughed about old times, made plans for a camping trip, talked about nothing important and everything that mattered. As I drove home later, I thought about the journey from that desperate moment at the ATM to here. My mother had given me more than money. She'd given me a second chance, a way to reclaim my dignity when I'd lost everything else. I pulled into my driveway and sat for a moment, looking at the modest house with lights on inside. No mansion, no luxury cars, no expensive anything. Just a simple, honest life built on work that mattered and relationships that were genuine. My ex-wife had her success and her money and her corporate empire. I had students who remembered me years later. I had a brother who called just to talk. I had peace. I walked inside, made tea, and sat down with a book I'd been wanting to read. Outside, the sun set over the mountains, painting the sky in shades of orange and gold. My mother had been right about everything. The money mattered most when I had nothing left. because having nothing forced me to discover what actually had value. Not houses or cars or status, but dignity, purpose, and the quiet strength to stand up for yourself even when it seems impossible. I opened my book and started reading. Tomorrow, I'd grade final exams. Next week, I'd celebrate what would have been my mother's 73rd birthday with family. Next month, school would start again, and a new group of students would walk through my door looking for someone to believe in them. And I'd be there, doing the work I was meant to do, living the life I was meant to live. Not because of the money, but because I finally understood that I'd always been enough. The inheritance didn't change me. It just gave me the tools to remember who I'd always been.